Is that your
Please
phone?
take your seat. Thank you, thank you. So, please be kind to take your seat. We have a great conversation with a great man. Thank you, Stephen, for being with us.
Happy to be here.
And Stephen doesn't need any introduction, but for the people who are watching us on live stream, Steve Cohen is the chairman and CEO and president of Point72, a global asset management firm, but he's more known, as you can see, as he bought the New York Met in 2020, and he's serving as its chairman and CEO. Steve is also a great philanthropist, and thank you for that. He co-founded the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation in 2001 already.
Somewhere we did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the foundation works in support of Lyme disease research, underserved communities, children, the arts, and sustainability. And last but not least, so just to see how holistic Stephen and his family are, he created the Cohen Veterans Networks and Cohen Veterans Bioscience in 2015 to improve veterans' mental health and quality of life. Please, a round of applause for Stephen Cohen.
Thank you.
But today, Stephen, we have heard a great deal in recent years about sport as an investable asset class. And you have run one of the most successful investment firms in the world. What is your view today on the business of sport and into the future? We see a lot of money going on sport.
There's a lot of money coming in, and when you actually look at the returns, I mean, they're not amazing. They're good, okay? I mean, obviously, some sports have been clearly better than others. And there's a lot of attempts to create all sorts of new leagues and you know, and all really competing for sports media contracts and you know, and obviously trying, you know, in a fractured consumer environment. Now they're all not going to make it, right? So if I'm going to invest, I think you want to go blue chip. You want to go with the major leagues. We know who they are in the U.S. and around the world. I think the media landscape is fractured now, and so therefore we're sort of going through a period of transition. I mean, ultimately it's about content, and content usually wins. And then there's the psychic enjoyment. You know, you want to measure return. It's not just about making money. It's about, I mean, the way I describe it is I tell somebody that I, you know, am the founder of Point72, everybody yawns. But if you tell them you own the New York Mets, they get really excited, okay? And so there's that psychic enjoyment of owning a team, and I think that's what attracts people to that.
You know, the late Nelson Mandela was always saying that sport is an amazing tool for social progress and economic development. You purchased the New York Mets nearly, 5 years ago?
That's right.
And how can investment in sport also be investment with purpose? You know, this FIM Miami is under the team investment with purpose for the good of many and the community.
Yeah, I mean, when I bought the team, in my initial press conference, I mean, I said clearly that, you know, I was doing it because I had an opportunity to take an unpolished gem, and the New York Mets just hadn't been invested in the way other teams had been for a long time, and I can turn this unpolished gem and make millions of people happy. I mean, wherever I go, there are Met fans everywhere, and so this was an opportunity but I call it philanthropy. I'm not trying to make money doing this. Frankly, if I break even, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. Yeah, and so you can impact people in different ways. Now, this is, you know, you may describe this as not as serious as trying to cure cancer, but it brings joy to people's lives, and I have that opportunity to do that, and that kind of excites me.
A few minutes ago on stage, we had, of course, His Excellency Yasser Romayan, who is at the head of LIV, and you made a major investment also in golf through PGA Enterprise and in the new Tomorrow Golf League. So what drew you to this investment? Do you envision more globalization of sport?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do with the development of streaming channels and global reach. When you're, if certain companies decide they want to broadcast your sport, you're not just reaching your traditional audience, you're reaching audiences that may be exposed to the first time to these type of activities and leagues and sports. And so, yeah, I mean, what was the question again?
It was about this globalization of
Yeah.
sport, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're seeing. I mean, in the end, is America ever going to gravitate to cricket? Probably not, right? I mean, but I mean, there's a huge audience out there, as an example, that cares about that, and so, yeah, I think there's. It brings people together. It brings fandom together. It engages people in ways that, you know, with all the partisan nonsense that goes on in the world today, you know, you can bring a Republican and Democrat to a game and they're not arguing anymore.
You know, at the end of the day, everything is about people. So let's talk about talents. And I'm curious to know how was your approach to talent development and how, in fact, this approach to talent development has changed over the years in finance and sport.
Yeah, listen, I mean, anything I do, whether it's my hedge fund or the Mets, I mean, if you're not trying to develop your next great talents, you're falling behind. And so I have development programs at my hedge fund that start right out of college, and learning and education never ends. And I feel the same way with the Mets. I mean, if we are not elite in our development of talent, and not just drafting talent, but taking players and trying to improve them. If we're not doing that, then I think it's a lost opportunity. And I set those type of standards of what I want my baseball management to accomplish, and I do the same thing at my hedge fund. It's cheaper. I mean, when you develop your own talent, it's cheaper. They know the culture. They know what you want. And, you know, listen, I signed a ball player this year, great ball player. He wasn't cheap, okay? I mean, would I prefer to develop him? Sure.
But which strategies are you using to develop talent? Are you using AI? Are you using some technology? Or are you going with the traditional ways of developing and incubating talent?
Yeah, listen, there's new technologies out there in both, whether my hedge fund or baseball, you know, using software, using cameras, using biomechanics. I mean, these are things that no one really talked about 5 or 10 years ago, and now I think it's an area that is underexplored. You know, we have 35, 40 people in analytics at the Mets. I mean, they're using, you know, everyone talks about AI. AI's been around for a while. I mean, machine learning's been around for a while. And so now everyone's focused on LLMs, but AI has been certainly in use, and we use it to find patterns and find, you know, ways to extract new information from the data we have. The more data you have, the more that you can find ways to create what I call new veins of alpha. And so, and that's true in the Mets, and it's true at point 72. So I listen, if you're not keeping up on technology, keeping up on you know, trying to be progressive going forward, you're going to fall behind. And so I think that those are table stakes today.
But you are also a major investor in AI, if I'm not wrong. So how do you see AI and sport coming together in the next future? You know, you will be the first one to maybe inspire us, since yesterday we started this conversation, to see how AI is disrupting all sectors.
Yeah.
But how do you see AI and sport going together for the next, let's say, 5 years?
I mean, just like a simple thing. Like, I mean, in the New York market, there's a program where 3 supposedly knowledgeable people are arguing about what the Mets should do. I mean, you could argue you could have 3 characters that are all AI generated, creating all sorts of, you know, banter back and forth, and it makes those personalities maybe less relevant. And so, I mean, it's about data. It's about, how do you engage in content? How do you engage with your fan? I mean, the more data you have on your fan, the more you can kind of customize a solution to what they need. And utilizing these techniques gives you the ability to really delve in much more into the data you have and the data you can create, and perhaps find things that you didn't know about before.
Are you picking players also based on data and AI?
I'm not picking. I try not to pick players. I leave that to my baseball people. If I'm picking the players, we got a problem. Yeah, listen, any tool that you can use that gives you an advantage. And frankly, I'll say it again, we've been using AI at the Mets for a while. I mean, that's what machine learning is. And if you weren't using those techniques, you'd be somewhat limited in the things that perhaps you can extract. I mean, baseball creates a ton of data. I mean, it's incredibly statistical. And the more that you can use compute, the more that you can create new forms of data, the more you can explore.
Let's talk about philanthropy. You're a great philanthropist with your family and the great foundation.
Yeah.
How do you see the future of philanthropy? So many people are coming to us and say, we want to invest with purpose. We want to have an impact. But how to start being a philanthropist without being a multi-billionaire?
Well, yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? And I think it comes down to identifying what you're passionate about. And you don't have to, there are plenty of places that you can either participate in the charity, in the philanthropy, on a board. You can learn how to do it, right? I mean, there's plenty of models out there that can teach you, how to build something. I mean, we built the Veterans Network, treating mental health, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury for veterans. I mean, we started with one clinic. I was making it up as I went along. We now have 25 clinics around the country treating 20,000 veterans and their families for free. We're about to open 2 clinics in Israel. I mean, we got contacted by the Saudi government to help them think about how to help their soldiers. So this isn't just a U.S. issue, an Israeli issue. This is an issue everywhere in the world. And so now all of a sudden, what was a very local U.S. project is now becoming a global project. Now, if you asked me 5, 10 years ago, would that happen? I would have said, I'm just trying to get this going. And so, listen, it's a management issue. It's a commitment issue, a funding issue. So you need to solve all those problems. And if you can solve all those problems, you can actually create something unique.
Talking about the U.S., you are so a global investor and someone who had a lot of impact. So what is your current outlook for the U.S. economy?
Yeah, I think this is one of those moments where there's really a lot of uncertainty, and I have pretty strong views here. When you take a brew of tariffs, I mean, tariffs cannot be positive, okay? I mean, it's a tax. And you can imagine tit for tat if the U.S. does something, implements a tax on somebody, somebody else is going to, perhaps raise the stakes and raise their tax back. So taxes are never positive. On top of that, we have slowing immigration, which means the labor force will not grow as rapidly as previous over the last, say, 5 years. And in addition, now you have DOGE, right? And wherever you lay on the DOGE issue, I mean, that's austerity. And austerity, when that money's been coursing through the economy over many years, and now potentially will be reduced or stopped in many ways, has got to be negative for the economy. So you have tariffs, I could see a situation where we think growth is going to slow to 1.5% from 2.5% in the second half, and yet unemployment is the unemployment rate is actually going to go down, which because of slowing labor force. And so, I mean, there may be offsets in Doge, and that needs to be considered. But the reality is you've got a brew of sticky inflation, slowing growth, and austerity in the government. And so I'm actually pretty negative for the first time in a while. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, but I do think, given where investors lay, how committed they are to the markets today, that I think we're seeing a regime shift a little bit. And it may only last a year or so, but it's definitely a period where I think the best gains have been had, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a significant correction.
Let's end our conversation on a positive note.
Right, okay. I mean, it's not that bad, okay? I mean, things don't always go up to the right, so it'll change again.
What gave you hope when you look forward?
I mean, human ingenuity, right? Think about the things that are going on today. Like, how can you be negative? I mean, there's so much innovation, so many new technologies out there, globalization in a way that it's not just happening in the U.S., it's happening around the world. I'm an optimist by nature, and I'm excited about all the different possibilities that are being created by entrepreneurial people.
As a mentor, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who wants to invest?
Well, find something. Once again, find something that you're passionate about, and be committed to it. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. I mean, you always have startup risk, and there's no guarantee of success. But even if you were to fail, you're still going to learn a lot. And maybe it's the second, third time that comes around where you actually learn from past mistakes. So, I mean, if you don't go for it, you're going to look back and wish you did.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Steve Cohen.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Yep.